Hi everyone, my name is Rod Jans and you're listening to the Get Inspired Talks podcast. For this episode of the Get Inspired Talks podcast, we visit with Bosco Anthony. Bosco is a digital marketing strategist and storyteller. He loves to share his insights on social media, context marketing, and integrated marketing solutions. Bosco is recognized for his mentorship, entrepreneur spirit, and passion for strategy. He thrives in a collaborative playground and is known for being an influence to the business and digital community on a local and international scale. If you enjoy the Get Inspired Talks podcast, please make sure you leave a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening on. That's the best way you can help us help others find the show. Now please help me welcome Bosco Anthony to the Get Inspired Talks podcast.
Right. So, I talked a little bit about this in my TED Talk, but I'll talk about, some of the real life applications that you need to do to fuel and build on your purpose. So most people have an inclination of what their purpose is, mostly through their childhood memories, because at the end of the day, the human brain basically absorbs different events, good, bad, emotions, stories, anything in here. And so the first thing you need to do is you need to identify what your origin story is. It could be an acknowledgement from your favorite soccer coach that made you realize that you love training. It could have been a very gruesome scene that you made a promise that you'd never go back there. Or, it could have been something very minute or something very major. You never know, right? So when you tap into your origin story where you're like, okay, this is my existence. For me, it was living in a developed country, seeing some crazy things that most kids my age don't see. So when I come to Canada, I sort of smile when people complain about the weather or when people complain about a SkyTrain or the roads or the Lionsgate Bridge shutting down. I smile because these extremes are not extremes for me. I've come from a very different place where, the word extreme is very drastic on a completely different scale. So when you learn about your origin story, you start to get closer to identifying and articulating what that purpose is. And what I've learned is people do things out of two things, either out of fear or out of love, right? So what I try to do is I try to get people to let go of the fear and focus on the love. Because when you start to do things out of love, Rod, and I know that some amazing things happen, right? So the first thing is identify what your origin story is. The next thing that I like to do is I like to then articulate where are we going, right? And then deconstruct backwards. So if you said to me, Bosco, I want to have a podcast with 1 million users, my first question to you is, how do we get your podcast to get 1,000 listeners, right? Then worry about getting to the 1 million, right? So I'm a strategist. So, if you've ever watched the movie A Beautiful Mind, he sees mathematical formulas in his head. I see blueprints in my head every day. That's what I do for a living. So I always like to know where you want to go or end up, and then we build backwards. And that's how you fuel your purpose with what you want to do from your passion. The next thing you got to do is you got to build a contract with yourself. You're signing contracts every single day. Your phone bill, your hydro bill, your mortgage. But the one thing that people forget is signing a contract with yourself, right? And that's when you start to become more conscious. You start to realize, are the relationships in my life making an impact? Am I doing things out of default or design? Am I doing things out of fear or love? Because now you're holding yourself accountable. And that accountability is how you start to build a rhythm, right? And that rhythm is what builds that consistency. And then you start to reflect on your actions and say, okay, what worked today? What didn't work today? What am I going to do better tomorrow? So as much as people think that there's this scientific gift that people have, it's really getting people to be more conscious and aware of how they're living. If someone's having a donut every morning and that's helping build diabetes for the person, then why do it, right? If you're constantly, I lost 100 pounds prior to the TED Talk, and I've been maintaining this weight. I've grown a beard a little bit longer than my TED Talk, but I've gone through a whole health transformation, and there were things that I needed to stop doing to get better in life. You know what I mean? So building that consciousness is what builds accountability. And the problem with humans is we have a lot of great intentions, but we never ask ourselves, how are we going to get there? That's half the the race is knowing how you're going to get there, right?
Thanks so much for taking the time today, Bosco. It's great to finally meet you. Even if we're still here on on video, we'll have to do it in person at some point. I'm sure we'll meet personally.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And yeah, it's been fun chatting with you. And I'm sure that like most of the digital relationships we build, we start on a digital screen, and then we'll probably be sharing a cold one somewhere down the street somewhere soon.
Good. You've been listening to a highlight video from the Get Inspired Talks podcast. For the complete podcast, please go to getinspiredtalks.com/podcast.